is essentially what we're looking at here is the creation of an independent regulator for the tech sector, that not only do we need answers, but we need to know what the right questions are as well, because the official statistics are so misleading.
Part of why I came forward is I know that I have a specific set of expertise. Like, I've worked at 4 social networks. I am an algorithmic specialist, so I worked on search quality at Google. I ran ranking for the home feed on Pinterest. I have an understanding of how AI can unintentionally behave. Facebook never set out to prioritize polarizing divisive content. It just happened to be a side effect of choices they did make. Part of why I came forward is that I am extremely, extremely worried about the condition of our societies, our condition of the global South, and the interaction of the choices Facebook has made and how it plays out more broadly. So things I'm specifically worried about are engagement-based ranking, which Facebook has said before. Mark Zuckerberg put out a white paper in 2018 saying engagement-based ranking is dangerous unless the AI can take out the bad things. And as you saw, they're getting 3 to 5% of things like hate speech. They're getting 0.8% of violence inciting content. Engagement-based ranking prioritizes that kind of extreme content. I'm deeply concerned about their underinvestment in non-English languages and how they mislead the public that they are supporting them. So Facebook says things like, we support 50 languages, when in reality, most of those languages get a tiny fraction of the safety systems that English gets. Also, I don't think this is widely known, UK English is sufficiently different that I would be unsurprised if the safety systems that they developed primarily for American English were actually under-enforcing in the UK. I would be unsurprised at that. And Facebook should have to disclose dialectical differences. I'm deeply concerned about the false choices that Facebook presents. They routinely try to reduce the discussion to things like, you can either have transparency or privacy, which do you want to have? Or you can, if you want safety, you have to have censorship. When in reality, they have lots of non-content based choices that would sliver off half percentage point of growth, a percentage point of growth. And Facebook is unwilling to give up those slivers for our safety. And I came forward now because now is the most critical time to act. When we see something like an oil spill, that oil spill doesn't make it harder for a society to regulate oil companies. But right now, the failures of Facebook are making it harder for us to regulate Facebook.
So on those failures, looking at the way the platform is moderated today, do you think unless there is change, do you think it makes it more likely that we will see events like the insurrection in Washington on the 6th of January this year, more violent acts that have been driven by Facebook systems? Do you think it's more likely we will see more of those events as things stand today?
I have no doubt that the events we're seeing around the world, things like Myanmar and Ethiopia, those are the opening chapters, because engagement-based ranking does 2 things. One, it prioritizes and amplifies divisive, polarizing, extreme content, and 2, it concentrates it. And so if Facebook comes back and says, only a tiny sliver of content on our platform is hate, or only a tiny sliver is violence, 1, they can't detect it very well, so I don't know if I trust those numbers, but 2, it gets hyper-concentrated in 5% of the population. And you only need 3% of the population on the streets to have a revolution, and that's dangerous.
I want to ask you a bit about that hyper-concentration,
Sure.
Particularly an area that you worked on in particular, and that's Facebook groups. I remember being told several years ago by a Facebook executive that the only way you could drive content through the platform is advertising. I think we see that is not true, and groups are increasingly used to shape that experience. We talk a lot about the impact of algorithmic-based recommendation tools like Newsfeed. To what extent do you think groups are shaping the experience for many people on Facebook?
Groups play a huge and critical role in driving the experience on Facebook. When I worked on civic misinformation, this is based on recollection, I don't have a document, but I believe it was something like 60% of the content in the newsfeed was from groups. I think a thing that's important for this group to know is that Facebook has been trying to extend the number of sessions, get you to consume longer sessions, more content. And the only way they can do that is by multiplying the content that already exists on the platform. And the way they do that is with things like groups and reshares. So if I put one post into a 500,000 person group, that can go out to 500,000 people. And when combined with engagement-based ranking, that group might produce 500, 1,000 pieces of content a day, but only 3 get delivered. And if your algorithm is biased towards extreme, polarizing, divisive content, it's like viral variants. Those giant groups are producing lots and lots of pieces of content, and only the ones most likely to spread are the ones that go out.
It was reported, I think, last year by the Wall Street Journal that 60% of people that joined Facebook groups that shared extremist content and promoted extremist content did so at Facebook's active recommendation. So this is clearly something Facebook is researching. What action is Facebook taking about groups that share extremist content?
I don't know the exact actions that have been taken in the last 6 months, a year. Actions regarding extremist groups that are recommended actively to users, promoted to users, is a thing that Facebook shouldn't be able to just say, this is a hard problem, we're working on it. They should have to articulate, here's our 5-point plan, and here's the data that would allow you to hold us accountable. Because Facebook acting in a non-transparent, unaccountable way will just lead to more tragedies.
Do you think that 5-point plan exists?
I don't know if they have a 5-point plan.
Or any plan?
I don't know. I didn't work on that.
Okay. But I mean, to what extent should we be considering groups, or should a regulator, UK regulator, be asking these questions about Facebook groups? I mean, from what you're saying, they are a significant driver